both of you for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having
Oh,
us.
thank you. Thank you so much.
I to phrase in the beginning during the narration, I love the part in the narration that says this is not a creative piece. This is a real life that's gone on for over a century, the atrocities committed against Native Americans. So it's a very vast topic to discuss. So beginning with you, Jesse, how did you lock in on how you wanted to arc the storytelling to make it digestible for a wide range of audience, but still maintain how meaningful it is to the Native American community and to the worldwide?
Yeah. I think that how that came to be is my initial meeting with Laura, and Laura was able to pull a clip from a Western movie back in the 50s, 60s that showcased the Black Hills, and that portion of that film and how Laura put it together, I knew that the power of the storytelling that we could try to do would just be everything that is good about being alive today, and just trying to share these things. So in other words, I think I just wanted to pour our heart into it, and Laura was able to see that, and we were able to match it. And so that's kind of how we wanted it to drive. And the fuel that comes from my heart comes from living here in Western South Dakota, along the Oglala Lakota Nation, and growing up amongst the Oglala Lakota Nation and around Sichangu Lakota Nations, and all the gifts that were given to me being around both of those communities, and the virtues given to me from those communities. And I think Laura and I tried to make that a very strong thread throughout the entire story.
Laura, what was particularly impactful to me, it was the interweaving of three things. It was the clips from Hollywood, with how in the olden times there were all these songs singing of the atrocities and how wrong they were, and commingling that with clips from Fox News about how it's trying to set the nation back, and then just actual historical fact. So speak, if you could talk a little bit about intermingling all of those different things and the emotions that it made you feel to hear, to see like the Fox clip that's used in there about setting the nation back, while commingling it with the songs of Hollywood of how the hills, the Black Hills, belong to the Lakota tribe, and all of those things, just marrying those trains of thought.
There's two things that I think that makes me think of. One is when Jesse and I first started talking about making this film, I think one of our goals was to not make the tone of the film to feel like we were blaming people, to make it feel inclusive. And for me, I think part of that is humor where you can find it. Sometimes you can find it by the audacity of some of these historical clips that we can all maybe more comfortably, uncomfortably laugh at because they're in the past. We're not pointing the finger at now. I think that sometimes working with recontextualizing material people are familiar with, combining that with personal narratives can be really effective to actually change the way people think about a story. Beyond that, I think that we were faced with this idea of trying to defend why, like, people that aren't familiar with a treaty, like, why does a treaty matter, right? And so I think that it was really important to layer the past, the present, potentially the future on top of each other, because this isn't a story that just happened in the past. These are all these like historical documents are things that very much have all these catastrophic effects today still.
I can't lie. I learned a lot, and I thought I was, attuned to a lot of things. I have This sounds good. I have Native friends. I have friends who are close to me who are Hickarilla Apache, who are Navajo. I read quite a bit about it. And I've heard their stories of going to Indian schools and being taken from the reservation, but I didn't connect it with how devastating that would be. It's always presented at like it was a choice for the children to be taken to the schools rather than forced indoctrination type of thinking. Jesse, for that, how do you how was it for you to share these? This is a very intimate look into the Native community that a lot of people like myself have not been privy to. Was it uh, a stressful thing, an emotional thing, of being able to open up and really share these stories in a way that is just so much more intimate than other movies that we've seen so far, or other documentaries and other scholastic things?
Yeah, for sure. And it it, it wasn't challenging. I mean that it is hard. Uh, it's hard to show some of these things, and it is hard to look at it in the face. And I never thought that even to a viewer it could be traumatic for them. That being said, I think that we the thing that was exciting to me was having people to understand that these things happen, that in the Great Plains region, when you look at the treaty, there is blood on the ground. When people come here, people have lost their lives. And the treaty is what a lot of tribes have to show for that, for all of that bloodshed, all of that brutality. And it is difficult. It's very difficult. It's difficult as a nation to look at. It's even just as it is as an individual looking at things that are challenges in our own life. But I think that if you can take the courage to look at these things that are hard to understand, why did this happen? How is it still applicable to today? If you can take the courage to look at that, then I think you can find new pathways. And I hope that those pathways can lead to better quality of life, so we don't ever make the same mistake again.
Laura, for where the storytelling is on we learn a lot about the federal governments, and I like the use of X being a repeated theme in it because it's very meaningful also to Black Americans as well, and the slave trade and how those atrocities were committed against my community. With the storytelling of focusing on the Black Hills, the four presidents on the hills, what is the state's stance in all of this? We've seen it from the federal level. Where is the state on these issues currently? Obviously, the government can override the state, but what have they taken a strong stance one way or the other?
I'm going to pass this to Jesse just because he worked in tribal government in Pine Ridge Reservation and lives in South Dakota, so he knows this much better than me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I think it's unfortunate. I think that the state probably will hold on to the other narrative very, very tightly. And unfortunately, I think that that's a very tough grip to crack. And I wish I could say I see opportunity, But at the current moment, I mean, and the divisiveness that is going on, it's a very embedded stronghold right now, and I can only hope that the state will try to be open with such history as this and try to acknowledge some of it, but I really don't know if that's going to happen or not.
Laura, back over to you with just the editing of a project. In the how much footage as a whole, when from the day gathering information and shooting started all the way to the end, how did you condense it down to the length that we received? Because I could have easily watched another whole hour and learned so much more, because I was so enthralled and leaning in and listening and learning and just being informed on so many things I didn't know. How did you decide to get it down to the length that we saw, under 2 hours?
Very painfully, I would say. I too really, Jesse has heard me say this. Jesse's certainly, was working with me on the earliest cut we had, which was probably 3.5 hours. And it seemed like there just wasn't, we needed to make sure it worked creatively. It was compelling for me. We could make this a mini series. We could make this something, we could make this, I would be happy to do that. I think that as an editor for me, and I'm working through my metaphors to talk about it, but I think that a lot of times when you get all these wonderful materials, you're looking for the right container for it. Another stupider way to say it is you have all the ingredients, you don't know what the recipe is. And so for me, a lot of what we were doing, and like you said, with layering the past, present, and the future on top of each other, was moving these pieces around so that we could find these echoes, we could find these connection points, making these kind of painful edits where we were losing sections that we love for one reason or another, but they didn't serve this driving point of policies the United States had enacted to try and steal land. I mean, we kept it narrow, and that allowed us to streamline it to 2 hours, but I'm happy to release the 10-hour, director's cut with Jesse anytime, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that. I mean, if we could have a spider cut of a superhero movie, we could have a whole Tomaselli cut of the whole narrative. They are wrapping me.
Oh.
They are wrapping me. I could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. Thank you so much for this project. I learned tremendously. I think I want to rewatch it again and learn some more, and hopefully it can make it into the school system, because it's really some beautiful work. Thank you for your time.
Oh, thank you, Jeandra.
Take care.